a city built on stockyards, jazz clubs, and the smell of hickory smoke. A city that quietly gave America the Happy Meal, the barbecue sauce on a billion backyard grills, and a dish that went from free scraps handed to waiting customers to one of the most celebrated things you can eat in America. Kansas City, Missouri, a city that has been cooking for a very long time and doesn't need your approval. A place where barbecue is not a menu category. It is an identity, a lineage that runs from a black man from Tennessee selling ribs wrapped in newspaper for 25 cents to a restaurant that has hosted Harry Truman, Barack Obama, and Steven Spielberg. A city where a child psychiatrist cooked barbecue sauce in his kitchen and changed how the country thinks about what sauce should taste like. Where an advertising man watched his son read a cereal box at breakfast and invented the most successful kids' meal in the history of food. Where a Sicilian immigrant reinvented a centuries-old Italian tradition using chicken because the 1980s told everyone to stop eating beef. The story of Kansas City barbecue begins in 1908 on a street corner near the intersection of 19th and Highland in the African-American neighborhood that would become the most famous jazz district in the Midwest. Henry Perry is from Shelby County, Tennessee. He learned to barbecue as a child. At 15, he went to work cooking on steamboats on the Mississippi River. By the early 1900s, he is in Kansas City, and he has an idea. He sets up a stand near a trolley barn and starts selling slow-smoked ribs to workers in the garment district. 25 cents a slab, wrapped in pages of newspaper. Low and slow over hickory and oak. A vinegar pepper sauce so hot, Perry was reportedly known to watch customers try it with visible amusement. Perry is the father of Kansas City barbecue. From his stand grew an entire tradition, a style defined by long smoking times, a wide variety of meats, and a sauce that would evolve for a century. When Perry died in 1940, he left behind a generation of apprentices who would carry the tradition forward. Among them, Charlie Bryant, who took over the restaurant, and Charlie's younger brother Arthur, who would eventually rename it Arthur Bryant's Barbecue and relocate it to 1727 Brooklyn Avenue, where it still operates today. The city that Perry helped create now has more than 100 barbecue restaurants, more barbecue joints per capita than any other city in America. Presidents eat there, rock stars eat there. The lines are long, the tables are formica, the food is served on butcher paper, and nobody apologizes for any of it. At Arthur Bryant's Barbecue, brisket is smoked whole and sliced for sandwiches. But a beef brisket has two sections, the flat, which slices cleanly, and the point, which is fattier and darker and cooks differently. The point ends. The charred, heavily smoked fatty edges of the brisket were pushed to the side of the cutting board. They were not on the menu. They were given away free to customers waiting in line, pushed across the counter as something to snack on while you waited for the real food. In April 1972, Calvin Trillin, Kansas City-born writer, essayist, humorist, published an article in Playboy magazine calling Arthur Bryant's the single best restaurant in the world. And in that piece, he described the burnt edges of the brisket in terms that made people across the country put down the magazine and start making plans. He wrote that what he dreamed about, when he was eating lesser food in other cities, were those burned edges of the brisket, the ones that were free, the ones that were considered scraps. The article changed everything. Customers started specifically asking for the burnt ends. Bryant's started saving them. Kansas City's other barbecue joints started cooking brisket point specifically to produce them. Over time, the style evolved. The rough, irregular scraps became precisely cut cubes of brisket, cooked a second time in sauce until they were lacquered, caramelized, almost candy-like. Texas Monthly's barbecue editor called burnt ends Kansas City's greatest contribution to barbecue. Not just Kansas City barbecue. Barbecue. Rich Davis is a child psychiatrist. He has a medical degree from the University of Kansas. He has academic appointments. He writes papers. He is a serious professional man. He is also an obsessive home cook who has been perfecting a barbecue sauce recipe in his Kansas City kitchen since the 1970s, and his friends and family will not stop telling him he needs to put it in a bottle and sell it. In 1977, he does. He originally calls it KC Soul Style Barbecue Sauce. He changes the name to KC Masterpiece. He designs a clean, classic logo. He loads cases of the sauce into his station wagon and drives them personally to Kansas City grocery stores. The sauce is different from the traditional Kansas City barbecue sauces of the era. Arthur Bryant's sauce was thin, gritty, vinegar-forward, polarizing. Gates' sauce had tang and acid. Rich Davis's sauce is thick, sweet, molasses-heavy. A sauce designed to cling to meat, to caramelize on the grill, to be exactly what millions of American backyard cooks wanted without knowing they wanted it. The first weekend, the stores sell out. In 1980, KC Masterpiece wins Best Sauce on the Planet at the American Royal Barbecue Contest. By 1986, the brand is generating over $5 million a year, and Davis sells it to Kingsford, the charcoal company, a subsidiary of Clorox, who takes it national. Here is the irony that Kansas City's purists have never quite forgiven. KC Masterpiece is now the most famous Kansas City barbecue sauce in the world, found on grocery store shelves in every state, recognized globally. And actual Kansas City barbecue people will tell you, with complete honesty, that nobody in Kansas City eats it. Here is a steak argument that Kansas City has been making for a century, and New York has been ignoring just as long. Kansas City was one of the largest cattle and meat packing centers in the United States throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Livestock arrived from across the Great Plains. Butchers handled enormous quantities of beef every day. And from the short loin of the steer, a section known for producing some of the tenderest, most flavorful meat on the animal, Kansas City butchers cut a steak that the city claimed as its own. The Kansas City strip is cut from the short loin. It is bone-in. It has a thick rim of fat along one edge, a firm texture, a clean, pronounced beef flavor. The bone-in version is what Kansas City claims. What New York does is debone the same cut, trim it closer, call it the New York strip, and serve it in fine dining restaurants as though Delmonico's invented it. In the 1930s, New York restaurants decided they didn't want to serve a fancy steak named after a city associated with stockyards and slaughterhouses, so they renamed it. Kansas City butchers, watching word spread eastward, started calling their version by its proper name in response. The dispute has never been fully resolved. Food historians generally agree the cut originated in the Midwest. New York has better publicists. It's 1977. Bob Bernstein runs an advertising agency in Kansas City called Bernstein Rain. His agency has been working with McDonald's local franchises since 1967, and Bob has been trying for a decade to solve a problem. How do you make McDonald's genuinely exciting for children? One morning, Bob is watching his young son at the breakfast table. The kid is reading the cereal box. Not eating. Reading the box. Every detail, every game, every bit of text on the packaging. Bob has seen this every morning. The boy is not interested in the cereal. He is interested in the box. Bob goes to his agency and says, "What if McDonald's gave kids their own box? Not just food. A box with games, puzzles, riddles, and comic strips on the outside. A box fashioned to look like a lunch pail with the golden arches as handles. A box designed by children's illustrators from across the country. Inside, a burger, small fries, cookies, a soft drink, and a small surprise toy. A Cracker Jack experience, but for a generation of fast food kids." He calls it the Happy Meal. McDonald's corporate offices are skeptical. The franchise owners worry about operational complexity. Bob has to convince them. He tests it in Kansas City in October 1977. He tests it in Phoenix and Denver. The response is immediate and overwhelming. In the summer of 1979, the Happy Meal goes national at $1.10 per meal. McDonald's sends Bob's agency a bronze Happy Meal box in 1987 that reads, "Thank you for bringing the Happy Meal, a bold idea, to the McDonald's system. Your insight and conviction truly has made McDonald's a fun place for children for the past 10 years. Today, roughly 250 Happy Meals are sold every second across the world. Every second. The toy has become a cultural artifact. Vintage Happy Meal toys sell on eBay for up to $50. McDonald's is one of the largest toy distributors on Earth, a status built entirely on the Kansas City advertising man who watched his son read a cereal box. This is not a food. It is the event that defines how an entire country competes for food. The American Royal is a Kansas City institution founded in 1899 as a livestock show and rodeo. In 1980, it added something new, a barbecue competition. Teams from across the country would come to Kansas City and compete for the title of Best Barbecue in America. Today, the American Royal World Series of Barbecue is the largest barbecue competition in the world. Over 500 teams from across the country and internationally compete over a single October weekend. Categories include beef brisket, pork ribs, chicken, pork, and sauce. Winning the American Royal is the equivalent of a Michelin star in the barbecue world. The competition created something that did not exist before 1980, a national barbecue culture with standardized competition, certified judges, a professional circuit, and a way for regional styles, Kansas City, Texas, Memphis, Carolina, to be measured against each other on a single field. In 1989, Mike Garozzo opens a restaurant in Columbus Park, Kansas City's historic Italian neighborhood, where Sicilian immigrants settled at the end of the 19th century, grew tomatoes in their back gardens, and cooked from the homeland. Garozzo is from The Hill, the Italian neighborhood in St. Louis. He knows Italian food. He knows spiadini, an Italian tradition of skewered and grilled meat, ancient in origin, made with beef or veal or lamb. He is opening Garozzo's restaurant, and he calls his Uncle Alfio in St. Louis to talk through the menu. His uncle looks at the menu and says, "Mike, you don't have enough chicken. This is 1989. Cholesterol is the great American fear. Everyone is abandoning red meat for white." Garozzo's response is essentially, "What are you going to do with chicken? We have chicken parmesan. We have chicken marsala. Chicken is chicken." His uncle persists, and Garozzo starts experimenting. The result, chicken tenders marinated in olive oil, garlic, basil, and breadcrumbs for up to 6 hours, rolled tightly into cylinders, skewered, coated in another layer of breadcrumbs, charbroiled, and finished with emojio sauce, a bright garlic-lemon-olive oil combination that cuts through the richness of the chicken and breadcrumbs. This is an entry about a greeting. Stay with me. In 1946, George W. Gates opens Gates' Old Kentucky BBQ with Arthur Pinkard, a cook who had worked under Henry Perry, in the kitchen. The restaurant evolves into Gates BBQ, one of Kansas City's defining institutions, known for its bright red buildings, its strutting tuxedo-clad logo, and a sauce that is tangier and more acidic than anything Rich Davis ever put in a bottle. But what Gates is most famous for, what has entered Kansas City culture as a kind of civic shorthand, is what happens when you walk through the door. The moment you enter any Gates location, before you have taken a second step, before you have looked at the menu, an employee calls out from behind the counter at full volume, "Hi, may I help you?" Not a murmur, not a friendly wave. A full-throated greeting that lands on every person in the room simultaneously. It is expected. It is instantaneous. First-time visitors sometimes freeze. This is the entry where the food and the music become inseparable. Kansas City in the 1920s and 1930s is one of the most wide-open cities in America. Under political boss Tom Pendergast, the city operates almost entirely without prohibition enforcement. Bars run 24 hours. Jazz clubs fill every block of the 18th and Vine district. Musicians play until sunrise. And around those clubs, in the diners and chili parlors and barbecue joints that feed the musicians and the crowds, a food culture develops that is as distinctive as the music itself. The after-hours culture of 18th and Vine creates a specific demand. Food that is available at 2 in the morning after a 3-hour set, in a neighborhood where the police are not particularly interested in enforcing laws. Barbecue joints that stay open late. Chili parlors. The intersection of Southern food traditions brought by Black migrants from Tennessee and Mississippi with the immigrant food cultures of German, Italian, and Jewish Kansas City. Henry Perry's barbecue stand feeds the musicians. The musicians become Charlie Parker, Count Basie, Big Joe Turner. The neighborhood becomes the most important jazz district in America outside New York. Let's settle something. Texas has brisket. Memphis has pulled pork. Carolina has whole hog. These are all legitimate, historic, deeply rooted barbecue traditions. The arguments about which is best have filled books and started arguments at dinner tables across the country. Kansas City's claim to being the barbecue capital of the world is not about a single meat or a single style. It is about something broader. the city that did more than any other to take American barbecue seriously as a culture, as a competition, as a discipline, as an identity. Henry Perry invented the tradition from scratch in a city where no tradition existed. Arthur Bryant's became the restaurant that put Kansas City barbecue on the national map. Calvin Trillin wrote the article that made the world pay attention. Rich Davis put Kansas City on the label of a bottle of sauce that spread the name to every state. The American Royal created the infrastructure for national barbecue competition. Joe's Kansas City, opened in a gas station in 1996, later named one of the 13 places Anthony Bourdain said you must eat before you die, proved that the next generation could match the founders. Kansas City has more barbecue restaurants per capita than any city in America. Its barbecue competition draws more international teams than any event of its kind. Its sauce style is the model that most Americans, if asked to imagine barbecue sauce, would describe.